Hello again. I've got another study in the 6,000 Years of Babylon series. I'm Maurice Barrett. We're up to book number 2. This is study number 12. We've looked at the statue of Babylon, and now I'm going to look at it again in this study, and I've called it Babylon's timeline because the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in a dream that Daniel interpreted is a wonderful timeline of history from Nebuchadnezzar right through till Jesus comes again and Babylon falls. So I've got a scripture to start off, Daniel 2 verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Maybe you wonder why I've put that scripture up, but you'll see as we go on near the end that that's very important. This is the end of the statue, the feet of iron and clay and the toes that didn't mix together. Well, we'll learn some more important principles, I hope, as we go through this study. Let's put up the picture of Babylon. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw. It was a fearful sight, and the top was gold. That was the head of Babylon. And then we've got the empire of the Medes and the Persians. That was silver. Then we've got the Greeks, that's the belly and the thigh. And then you've got the legs, which is the Roman Empire. And then you've got the feet and the toes, which are part iron, so it's the continuation of the Roman Empire. And that's the one we're still in. It's never finished because it's mixed with miry clay. But that statue lasts until Jesus comes. So now we're in under the Roman Empire. But it's interesting, Nebuchadnezzar lived 597 years before Jesus, and it carries right on through, so it's, 2,600 years. And what I want to look at, the metals. It's interesting, as you go down the body and further in world history, each metal is less malleable, it's more brittle. And it's lesser in quality. The more we go down, it's more base. And therefore, there's more of it and it's cheaper. So we've got gold, which is very valuable. Then we've got silver, which is less valuable. Then brass, which is actually an alloy. It's copper and tin mixed together. Old-fashioned, it was called bronze. It was the same as brass. And iron, and then clay. So you're going from a very valuable metal right down. So each empire is getting more base in God's eyes. We think the British Empire was the crown because, civilization has advanced, but that's evolution. Actually, God sees it as each empire getting more base, less value. Bigger, there's more of it, so each empire gets bigger, but it's more base in God's eyes. That's interesting, until it comes to the fruition where God destroys it. Well, let's look at it. Gold has amazing properties of malleability. It can be beaten out to surprising lengths, and it's also rare, so it makes it more valuable. I've got some facts. A small gold nugget, 5 millimeters in diameter, can be expanded to 20,000 times its initial surface through hammering. You can beat and beat and beat it, and it'll go thinner and thinner. That's why we get gold foil. So it can produce gold foil of a surface about 1/2 square metre. That's just from a 5 millimeters into a thickness of about 0.2 or 0.3 micrometers. And that's a millionth of a metre. That's amazing. How malleable it is. You won't break it. Like iron is very brittle, but gold's so malleable. And so it's rare. Silver's not so rare, lesser of value than gold, but it's not as flexible. Therefore, there's more of it. So this kingdom will be less flexible, but larger in size. And I'll show maps of the kingdoms later. Brass, which is an alloy, I've said that, it's zinc and tin, or copper and tin. And it was called bronze historically. So in the Bible, there's, brass or bronze. And it's less pure, not as malleable as silver or gold, and more abundant. So it shows that that's going to be a bigger empire. And so it was. And iron is the most common metal in the world. It's actually soft when it's mined, but impurities are added to it. That's interesting. It's not on its own. We add impurities to it to make it brittle. And iron ore forms much of the Earth's outer and inner core. It's more abundant than any other metal, indicating it's a still larger empire that will cover the Earth because iron is the most common. And then we've got the toes, which were not a metal at all, really. Clay, that's not even a metal. And clay is the dust of the ground, so that covers the whole world. So this last empire will be more base than all the others, but it'll be the biggest. In fact, it'll cover all the earth because you can't go anywhere on the planet without soil, without clay. So isn't it amazing that God has made it so accurate? It's not just put any metals. It is shown that they're more base and there's more of them. Well, as with the body, the head always rules. So that's interesting because the head of gold, those principles that Nebuchadnezzar had, are still applied to all the other empires because the head rules. As sure as Christ is the head of the body of Christ, and unless we're rebellious, Christ rules the body. So Nebuchadnezzar, that spirit of Babylon, will rule all his empires. So the different empires, the Roman Empire has no different ethos and politics than Babylon did. And the British Empire has no different principles than King Nebuchadnezzar had because the head still rules. And don't forget, he said to Nebuchadnezzar, wherever men dwell over all the earth, God's given them to you. God gave them to Nebuchadnezzar, so he rules. It doesn't matter what empire is there, whether there's a one world empire or the Babylonian one or the Medes and the Persians. That head still rules. It controls the whole universe, well, the whole of planet Earth. So the statue doesn't change. It's just a development of it. Its ethos, principles, religion, politics, they remain the same in any world empire. So that's why I've always said in my sermons that communism is no better than fascism, is no better than capitalism. They're all different ways to rule Babylon. It's just a different way of ruling people on the planet, but one's not better than the other. They're all part of Babylon. They just change, and we think one's better. So we're not deceived by the appearance. Doesn't matter whether it looks gold or it looks brass and tarnished or it looks as clay. It doesn't matter. The principles are there. So Christians mustn't be deceived. When you think, well, we've got democracy in America and Great Britain, so we're better. No, it's part of Babylon. Don't be deceived. It's no different. And the head's still controlling it. It's maybe a different mask on the head. But if I put a different mask on, I'm still Maurice Barrett and I'll still have my same principle. It doesn't matter whether I put a mask on for a monster or a female or a child and you're looking at something different, it's still me. So they're just masks. Babylon still rules. I've not said my points. Let me go through them because number one, each metal further down the body is further in world history. That's my first point. I didn't say that, but as each empire goes, it's a timeline, so they're further on in world history. Number two, each part of the statue from head to feet goes down. It's less flexible and more base. Number three, as with the body, any body, the head rules it. And number four, the metals deteriorate in quality. Starts as gold, ends up as clay. And it's the opposite of the alchemical process. If you don't know anything about alchemy, people say it's making base metals into gold. And the philosophers of old you see them sitting over cauldrons and putting this chemical in sulfur and phosphate and different things, trying to make gold from base metals. That's only an allegory. That's only a metaphor. It's really making base men into gods. That's what alchemy is about, how to make men into gods. And it's the opposite of it's evolution, to take flesh and blood and make us gods. And that's the whole process. But God's showing that it's the opposite. We're trying to be more like God, and actually we're becoming less like God. In fact, evolution is the diametrically opposed to the truth. Because we started off in God's image and we're getting more like a one-cell amoeba. We're getting more base and more animalised in our behaviour. We started off perfect in God's image. So evolution is the very opposite, that we started off as nothing, as animals, and we're going to end up as gods. How perverse is that? Exactly the opposite. So much of Masonics and pop songs. Do you remember one of the most popular rock songs, and I never understood why it was so popular, Stairway to Heaven? It's so popular, and it's the winding staircase. If you read the words, it's to make men into gods. That's the spiritual mystery. That's what Babylon's all about. That's the devil's lie to Eve. Don't worry, you won't die. I'll make you to live forever. I'll make you as gods. And God knows you'll be like gods, but I'll find a way to make you live forever. That was a lie of the serpent. So, with understanding DNA, how we do now, and DNA, the mystery of DNA, I think it was a man called Creek. He was on LSD. He was a taker of LSD, a mind-expanding drug. Satan gave him the key to the DNA. Most of these scientists are into the occult. That's where they get the hidden knowledge from. And so we're very close to it because we can manipulate people's DNA. We can alter them. Some of the modern drugs actually alter our DNA. They tweak it. It's very, very, very close to the end, I believe, where Satan has the key to make us live forever. The Holy Grail, the elixir of life, the book of life. We've discovered the book of life. That's the DNA. All my members were written in a book, David said. David knew about DNA. He didn't call it DNA, but he said, all my members were written in your book, when as yet there was none of them. When 23 chromosomes come together from your mother and 23 from your father, that makes the string of DNA that'll stretch to the moon and back. I don't know how many times, but they say it's a massive. And now they've discovered it's a book, and it actually has sentences and paragraphs in for different parts of the body. And it's the instructions for me and you to make us. So once we've discovered the book of life, we can alter it. You can alter a book. Once you've got a book, you can change the chapters round. You can mess it about. You can take words out, alter the grammar. So we're capable now of almost being gods. We're very close to it. And the media are pumping this into us, these images. You know, the Olympics, that's an occult thing. They carry the eternal flame. That's what the Masons have on the top of the obelisks, and often St. Paul's Cathedral, different cathedrals, they have the dome, and they have a flame on top, a pot with a flame. That's the eternal flame. That's what they run at the Olympics. They're going for gold. Is it funny, isn't it? The highest medal is a gold medal. They're after gold. They want to make men into gods. Because when you are the fastest man in the world, you become a god. People worship you. I'm going for gold. And the opening ceremonies now of the Olympics, the Paralympics, we've just had, this is 2022, the end of the year, we've just had the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. And I know there's a bull ring in Birmingham, but they've used a bull, a massive bull in the opening ceremony with a woman riding the bull. Europa, the woman rides the beast. And there's these people come from all over the world with these shards illuminated, and they're all worshipping the beast. They're all on the knees in a circle worshipping the beast. If that's not a prophecy, it's amazing how the media know the one world system is very, very close. We've almost got it, they've just not implemented it. The power's there. Well, in these empires that follow Nebuchadnezzar, two things are apparent. One, they exceed each other in size. And more important, or as important, each one extends more to the west, because God started civilization in Mesopotamia. That's the east. That's the east. And ever since men have gone west, I'm going to show it. Before I do, the statue has parallels in Daniel 7, and I'm not going to look at that. You can do your own study. But it shows beasts, and each beast seems to coincide with the parts of the statue. The first was a lion. That would be Nebuchadnezzar, wouldn't it? You know, often when you look at the old hieroglyphics and the cave engravings and Babylon, you see a lion. There's often a lion on it. The first was a lion having eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings were plucked up, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And there's Babylon, there's the world map, and that little bit of yellow, dark yellow, that's Babylon. So it didn't cover the whole world. That was the biggest empire in the world at that time. But it was small, wasn't it? But that was the biggest empire, that was Nebuchadnezzar. But don't forget that rules, it started in the east. And then the silver, and that's the bear. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. So that's a Medo-Persian empire. Can you see how much bigger it is than Babylon? Babylon was only a third of that size. And now it's extended west. Can you see it's in North Africa and going towards Europe and Asia Minor? And that carried on till Cyrus the Great. Well, the third one, the brass, and this I behold, and lo, another like a leopard. So if those coincide, which I believe they do, I believe they could also be prophetic of something else, but I won't go into that. But that's the Greek Empire, which had upon its back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Well, can you see that's gone more into Africa, and it's gone more into Europe? It's going west all the time. It's not going east, is it? It's not going into India and China that way. It's going to the west. Alexander the Great was a very interesting man. I won't go into it, but it's worth studying. In the year 331, he became one of the greatest intellect the world has known, and his influence has been felt ever since. And he saw, with his eagle glance, the unrivalled advantage of a spot, now Alexandria, and conceived the mighty project of making it the point of union of 2 or rather 3 worlds. So in a new city, called it after himself Alexandria, it united Europe, Asia and Africa. It was a uniting of the world to expand this empire, this statue of Babylon. Very interesting. And then we've got iron, the Rome. And after this I saw in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. We talk about the iron fist of Rome. It devoured and brake in pieces. It was very military, very disciplined. The residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So this is different, and 10 powers. So that's the Roman Empire. Can you see how it's got into Great Britain, hasn't it? It went right up to Hadrian's Wall, to Scotland, and it overtook Wales. So it's taken a massive part. That was the world's biggest empire. Each one got bigger and it's going more west. Well, I believe we're living in the Iron Age now, I call it, because we're in the toes of iron and clay, I believe. So we're still under the statue of Babylon, and we're still under the Rome. We're still under the iron. Well, the empire under the Caesars went and conquered Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, further west to Africa. And it was its most powerful 117 years AD. So after Jesus died, this was the Roman Empire. And of course, Rome took over, religious Rome took over political Rome. It never changed. The Roman Empire didn't die, it just changed from being political to religious. But the Roman Catholic Church is political as well as religious and military, so it didn't change at all. This empire didn't re-emerge with the European community, it never died. People think this is the revived Roman Empire. It never died, it carried on. The Pontifex Maximus, and that's Latin, it literally means greatest pontiff, was the high priest of the College of Pontiffs in ancient Rome. So that was the title of the highest person in Rome. This was the most important position in the ancient Roman religion. A distinctly religious office under the early Roman Republic. It gradually became politicized until, beginning with Augustus, it was incorporated into the imperial office. The word Pontifex later became a term used for Christian bishops, including the Bishop of Rome. And the title Pontifex Maximus was applied within the Roman Catholic Church to the Pope as chief bishops. So that's how it morphed. The most important religious person in ancient Rome, political Rome, became the most important person in religious Rome. It just changed. Well, the Catholic Church is a military and political organisation as well as religious. We've got the Knights of Malta. Knights are military, aren't they? Knights are fighters. Knights aren't politicians, they're fighters. And we have the Knights of Malta. So Christianity is the disguised religion of Babylon. So are all the other religions. I've said it many times, but I'm saying it more often now. There's only one religion in the world. There are not 2 or 3 or 20. There's only one, and it's false. Because every religion is false, even Christianity. Because God didn't come to start a religion with the Jews. They made it into a religion, Judaism or Hebrewism. And Jesus never came to start a religion. Jesus came to give us a relationship back with God. It's about relationship, it's about love. And you can't have love and religion. If you're religious, you can't love. And if you love, you don't need a religion. So every religion is part of Babylon. That's it. God didn't want a religion. He wanted a relationship, and you can't mix them up. So in the Catholic Church, and it's gone over to the Anglican Church, all the regalia, the fish heads, hats to crooks and garments, they're all witchcraft garments, the purple and the blue that the cardinals and the bishops wear. They've all come from witchcraft, the hoods and the hooded. It's all come from witchcraft. It's never come from God. Where's the talk in the epistles of clerical garb? Collars or long robes or certain colours for bishops to show your authority. Where did that come from? And the crook. These are all implements of Babylon. This is the European expansion. Can you see how big Babylon's become? Because Britain went and conquered America, Africa, India. See all the red, I don't know if you can see the code, but the red is Britain. So Britain colonised that, the British Empire, and that's part of Babylon. Australia, and the Dutch, the orange is the Dutch colonies, and they did Indonesia and those. The blue is the French colonies. Can you see how France colonised a lot of Africa? And the Portuguese, that's the green. They colonised Africa and South America. And the Spanish, the yellow, that's the Spanish. But all from Europe. So the British Empire and Europe colonised the whole world. It's amazing that Europe did that, because that's where Babylon was. That was Rome. Christopher Columbus was a Catholic, wasn't he? Went to find the New World. It's all the expansion of the Babylonian Empire. Well, the British Empire was and still is the largest empire in world history. As it was said by John Wilson under the pseudonym of Christopher North, His Majesty's dominion on which the sun never sets. Whenever you go where the sun travels 24 hours, the sun will always be shining on the British Empire. It never sets on the British Empire. Well, people think we've lost the empire. That's not true. The British Empire has changed from overt control to covert control. We still control Africa. I've been to 12 African countries and they're still controlled by the West. They're still poor. We still take all the diamonds and the minerals from them, and it's still growing. Well, the European expansion happened from 1500s to the 1900s, and the church funded much of this explanation and exploitation of peoples around the world. All the kings of Europe are related through intermarriage, and expansion of Europe around the world gave Babylon power over more of this earth's surface. Well, now we've got the one world order ready to take over. The whole world has now been westernized. Can you see the top? The dark purple? That's the one world. It's funny how it's north, isn't it? That controls the rest. The lesser, like China and that, Russia, they're the countries in transition. They're moving to the one world. The rest, the very pale purple mauve, is the undeveloped countries. And all of Africa, those are developing countries. All South America, most of Africa, or all those eastern countries. Amazing. So it's all going purple in different degrees. We're very, very close now. Technology now, if you go to the third world, people have mobile phones. You see, they're still connected to Babylon, even what we call the third world. When I go to Africa, everyone's got a mobile phone. In fact, their network is better than ours because we have landlines still. They never run landlines into the bush. It takes years to do it, but with radio signals, all they've got to put is a tower near a village, and the whole village have got Wi-Fi. And so even the undeveloped countries are connected. They're part of the one world system. You can go to the poorest countries and there's a mud hut or a broken down building, and they've got one table and a chair and they sleep on the floor. They've got a television. My wife and I were amazed when we went to the third world and saw these countries. They had nothing, but they had a Western television, and therefore they're getting westernized, they're getting Babylonianized. And the whole world, when you go to China, they're wearing Western fashions. We're not wearing Chinese fashion, are we? When I go to Africa, they're not wearing African dress. Now they all wear European dress. In fact, when Jodie and I wear our African garments, we stand out like a sore thumb. We're more African than they when we go. They're all in three-piece suits and tight trousers, the women, and we're wearing our African garments to identify with them. The whole world's getting westernized, which means Babylonianized. The music, go to Africa, they're listening to our pop music, American rock. Go to China, they're listening to our rock music. We're not listening to Chinese music. It's not taken over England. African music has not taken over England. It's been imbibed, the jungle drums and different influence, Brazilian music, the bossa nova. They were all, but it's become Western. we've taken over the world with music and with culture and with fashion. I've been going to Africa for many years now, and I've seen a massive influx of infrastructure. The Chinese are pouring billions of dollars into Africa. They're building roads and infrastructure. It's amazing. And of course, the end is to have everyone on the planet have a computer or a mobile phone, either be chipped or controlled in some way through the phone, and yet think that they're free. That's the great thing. That's the deception that one of Hitler's, I think it was Herr Göring, he said that it's possible to put people in prison and make them believe they're free. And it's possible that people who are free to make them feel as though they're in a prison. It's mind control now. So we can think that we're free when we're not. You know, the story of Joseph is a good example. Let me tell you the story of Joseph. It's applicable to the one world order, because all the prophecies of what's happening now is in the Bible. When the famine came, through Joseph, Pharaoh took advantage of the famine. And because Joseph had supernatural wisdom, he put he saved up the corn, and when the famine came, people came to Pharaoh because he had the one world's supplies. He owned everything in the world. There was a famine, but he had the resources, so people came to him and bought off him. And then when they had run out of money, they said, "We've got no more money left." He said, "Oh, well, give me your cattle and I'll feed you." So they gave him the cattle. And then they said, "We've no more cattle." He says, "Well, give me your property, give me your houses." So the people gave Pharaoh the houses. You can read it all in Genesis. And then he said, "We've got no more." He said, "Well, give me your land then." So they gave them the land, and Pharaoh said, "You can work the land. I own it now, because I've saved your life. You could work the land and give me 20% of all that you grow on the land." It was their land, but they had to give 20%. It's interesting, isn't it? 20% tax, that's VAT. We should never have to pay VAT. We pay income tax on our wages. Everything we earn, we pay tax on. And then what you buy, after the government's taken your taxes, you have to pay 20% on everything. It's ridiculous. There's no need to do that. It's a form of control. And we think we're free in the West, and we're paying taxes and income tax and tax on cars, and you have to get a license to get married, and you have to get a license to drive a car. So it's illegal to drive a car on the British roads. You have to get a license. It's amazing. You can't just drive. They allow you to drive. Nobody owns a car in Great Britain. If you look at what you call the logbook, it says you are the registered keeper, not the registered owner. You're only the keeper. They own everything. When you get a birth certificate, the government own your children. You're a number on the stock exchange. They can borrow money off the IMF because you've got so many people registered to the government that you can force taxes. And the taxes of a nation are the guarantee when you borrow 10 billion off the IMF. That's a guarantee. Because you can't borrow money without security. Well, that's the security. Britain has said that they will guarantee the loan back to the IMF by taxing the people. That's why the taxes go up, is to pay off the debt. It's unbelievable. And you know, it's hard to believe. The people thanked Pharaoh for saving the life. You've saved our life. We'd have died without you. Well, that's true, but he caused the situation. He took advantage of it. And people will thank the man of sin for saving them. Millions of Christians will, because the man of sin will save us from the woes of the world. The pandemic, oh, thank God the scientists have found a solution. The terrorists, thank God we've got a one world army to protect us. Thank God we've got rid of world wars because there's only one army in the world and there's only one government. We'll thank the government. Welcome to the man of sin. Can you see how it's all being set up? But it's in the Bible with Pharaoh. He controlled everything and the people, and they thanked him. That's why famine, epidemic diseases, banks collapsed in this. We've seen all this. I've seen it in my lifetime. It's why we're afraid of terrorism when there's no real threat. It's why we're fearful of the pandemic, which is a hoax. I know there's a disease, but 99% people recover. A woman's got more chance of being raped than dying from COVID. More women get raped than die of COVID. So the figures don't add up. It's a hoax, but it's about control. And yet people believe they're free. Well, I've got the passport vaccine. I can now travel. I can now shop. They'll thank the government for giving them their liberty. When people receive the mark of the beast, they'll thank the government. At last, we're free. We can buy and sell and we can trade. It's your passport to success. Well, my wife's been passing me information about what's happening in China now, and it's amazing how they're locking people up when they've got this COVID. And they're imprisoning people for their own health. They'll say it's for your own good. They'll drag you off into a special unit and they say it's to protect you. It's amazing. And well, you read Big Brother and 1984, it's all prophesied. Well, the world's nearly sick enough to demand a remedy. Welcome to the beast. You know, the whole world will become democratic. That's why we're bringing the dictators down. That's why we went to war in Afghanistan and Libya and these places, to make the whole world democratic, because we'll vote in the man of sin. He won't get in by a military coup. He'll get in by a vote, I believe. It's amazing how Christians in America thought Trump was the answer. It is the answer. He's a potential man of sin, as far as I can see. He's certainly not serving God. He's certainly not a Christian. For anyone to think that a royalty or a president of a country would be a Christian, it just beggars belief. They're serving the God of this world. If you're at the top of the system and Satan's the God of this world, who are you serving? Just use your common sense. You'd forget what the politicians say, forget what faith preachers say, forget what so-called prophets say. Use your common sense and read the Bible. The whole world lieth in wickedness. Satan's the God of this world. So if you're at the top in music or politics or fashion or anything, or government, you're serving Satan. And when you scrutinise, and I've looked at these people at the top in show business, in fashion, they're all Satanists. They're all worshipping the devil in some different ways, some more overtly, some covertly. Well, Genesis 47. It's happening again in front of our eyes. This is the story that I've tried to tell you. And there was no bread in the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they brought, and Joseph brought the money unto Pharaoh's house. And when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, money will fail soon, because we'll have a cashless society. So what good is your money? Your digits. You've got no money with a credit card. That's not money. It's a piece of plastic. And you get so much credit. Your wages will be so many units soon. You'll get 1,000 units if you're well paid. And what you buy, they take units off. Cash is going. Money failed in the land of Egypt. He's prophesying. And all Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth with no money. Joseph said, give me your cattle, and I'll give you your cattle, if your money fail. And they brought the cattle to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for flocks, and for cattle and for herds and for asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. And when the year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said, we'll not hide it from my lord, how that our money is spent. My lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not enough left in the sight of my lord, but our bodies and our land. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our bread, a land for bread, and we will, and our land will be your servant. They offer themselves as slaves They sold themselves to the one world system. That's what's going to happen. How Christians can't see it. They're selling themselves. Christians themselves are selling themselves and they don't even realise it. And it's in the Bible. But that's just a story of Joseph. It can't apply today, of course. I can't understand how people read the Bible and don't apply it. It's practical. It's living. Every passage of the Bible, every illustration, every story, every miracle is applicable in 2022. It's all applicable. It's prophecy and it never dies. It's cyclic. We and our lands will be your service, and give us seed that we may live and not die. The land be not desolate. And Joseph brought all the land for Egypt, for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine prevailed over them, so the land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he removed them to cities. He took them off the land. Cities are Babylon. Let's build a city and a tower. Cities are to do with Babylon. God meant people to work the land. He didn't imagine you to live in high-rise flats like battery chickens and reproduce. He removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Only the land of the priests bought he not, for the priests had a portion assigned to them of Pharaoh. These are Pharaoh's priests. And did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them. So he didn't put the religious in bondage. He kept the priest. Wherefore they sold not their lands. Then Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is the seed for you. Ye shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the increase that you shall give a fifth part, 20% VAT, and 4 parts shall be your own, for the seed of the field and for your food, and for them of your household, and food for your little ones. And they said, Oh, thank you, you've saved our lives. Saved their lives, they were slaves. Well, a live dog is better than a dead lion, to quote the Bible. So at least they were alive, but how can you compare a dog with a lion? They thought they were still lions, but they were dogs. Let us find grace in thy sight, and we will be Pharaoh's servant. You've saved our lives, we're so grateful. That's what people will say, and Christians will jump on the bandwagon. They always have, so I know history, so I know the future. They'll thank the one world dictator. And the famine caused God's chosen to seek help in Egypt. You know, when the famine comes, the cashless society, God's people will go to the world. I was just talking to somebody before the meeting and saying how Christians rush to the world instead of to God, because every problem is spiritual. So why do we rush to the physical, the world? But the famine caused God's people to seek help in Egypt. God said, do not go down to Egypt for help. That's the world. James says, John said, love not the world, neither the things that are in it. That's spiritual adultery. You love God and you love the world. And the famine will test you. Whether the sickness, the famine, the fear, the terrorism, the COVID, whatever it happens, it causes God's people. It's good. Sickness is good in God's people because it finds out whether they'll rush to the world. A sacking of a job, it's good. Trials are good for Christians because it finds out where your faith is. And most Christians have no faith. They rush to the world because the faith's in the one world system. And they don't know it because the pastor says you're God's children and you're more than conquerors, but they're not. How can you be more than conquerors when you rush into the world for help and you say, Almighty God is my Father? Fancy me having a billionaire father, and when I'm in trouble, I go to a beggar and say, can you help me? And my dad's a millionaire. You go to your father when you're in problem. You don't go to some stranger who can't help you. We're not supposed to be of this world. It's supposed to be a stranger. Live as strangers and pilgrims to the world. Well, the famine caused God's people to seek help in Egypt. God was testing them. Well, after 2 years, Joseph revealed himself. Joseph said, I'm Joseph. Does my father still live? And his brethren couldn't answer him. They were troubled at his presence. And Joseph says, come near, I'll pray for you. And they came near and he said, I'm Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve your life. Joseph's a type of Jesus. Jesus is prepared to save Israel. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall be neither earing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve your posterity, to save your life by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go, my father, and say, thus saith my son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come not down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there I'll nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine. So there's 7 altogether, 7 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. So Joseph revealed himself after 2 years. It's interesting, the beginning of the 3rd year. Jesus rose on the 3rd day. And the 3rd day, let me read you Hosea 6, verse 2. It's a prophecy of, after 2 days he will revive us. So there was famine for 2 years. The 3rd day will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. 2 years of famine. Jesus will restore Israel in the 7 years on the 3rd year. He will raise us up. That's a prophecy, Hosea, I can't go into that. The resurrection was on the 3rd day. It wasn't 3 days, 3 nights in the belly of the whale. That's to do with Jonah. Jesus and all the apostles said Jesus rose on the 3rd day. And we know it was early on the 3rd day. Resurrection, restoration always starts early on the 3rd day. After 2 days he'll afflict us, on the 3rd day he'll restore us. So it's consistent throughout the Bible. Well, let me come to an end. People and nations are being enslaved and withheld. Money's been withheld for this purpose. Most countries are in debt. I don't know if you know. You can go to the World Debt Clock, www.worlddebtclock. And you'll be amazed. And the figures are spinning round and the debts are going up. You can see how much dollars are going on every day. Well, the USA, when I first did this study, I think it was 20 years ago, USA were 18 trillion in debt. Now they're 30.5 trillion in debt. America, the richest nation. And the UK is $3.3 trillion in debt. So you've got to look through the eyes of the Bible. And then you'll see clearly. People watch television and the news and they quote it as though it's truth, it's propaganda. The Bible will tell you the true history. Look through the eyes of the Bible, you'll see Babylon. I've said this earlier on, but it was the church that financed explorers. You know, the church put Hitler in power and Mussolini. It's amazing how Babylon controls the kings of the earth. And the church financed explorers Vasco da Gama, Columbus, Cook, who supposedly discovered the whole continent for the empire of Babylon. Francis Drake was sent by Elizabeth I to find the New World for the American project. Francis Bacon had planned this with his occult friends. I believe Francis Bacon wrote the Shakespeare plays because they're all occult prophecy. And Francis Bacon wrote about Atlantis, about America, the new Atlantis. Well, the USA, I believe, still control from London. That's the financial capital of the one world system. Rome is the religious capital, and Washington, D.C. is the political capital. And I've showed that on other videos, earlier ones, I'm just repeating. Let's go back to the opening scripture that I put to close with. This is in the last days. This is the feet of iron and clay. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of... Who's they? They shall mingle. Mingle means become one, doesn't it? If you mix, it means mix. If you mingle things together, you put two together and they become one. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Could it be that angels and demons will again mate with women? They'll mingle themselves with the seeds of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Very interesting how they'll mingle themselves together in the last days. Well, I'll leave you with that. But it says the last days will be as the days of Noah, when mingling happened. The sons of God saw the daughters of men and they mated with them. So it's interesting. I'll leave that with you. I don't want to cause controversy. I'm just leaving that thought with you. But the last thing I want to say is that the statue, the stone that was made without hands, hits the feet. Well, David, when he wanted to kill Goliath, he got his sling and he hit the head. Because if you want to kill somebody, you aim at the head, don't you? Not the feet. You won't kill anyone by hitting the feet. So why hit the feet? It's because that's where the empire is. Nebuchadnezzar's gone, the Greek and the Medes and the Persians, the Greek, the Roman Empire. It's the feet. So it hits the empire. So it shows that Babylon won't fall with Nebuchadnezzar or the Medes and the Persians or the Greeks or the Romans. It'll be when this mixture comes at the end. And the statue's still standing after 2,500 years. But when it hits it, the whole statue falls because it's the statue of Babylon. So the Medes and the Persians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonian empires all collapse when we hit the feet because that's the statue of Babylon. So that's interesting. The other thing is that the stone isn't Jesus. We know that Jesus is the rock. But the stone is the kingdom. Jesus brings his kingdom. But it said the stone hits and becomes a kingdom. Babylon is the counterfeit kingdom or one world system. So Jesus comes and this stone, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of Christ. That's what it says in Revelation. So the stone hits Babylon, destroys it, and that takes over. The kingdoms of the world become the kingdoms of Christ. And it says it fills the whole world. Well, after the fall of Babylon, the new Iron Kingdom will be set up and rule with a rod of iron. Don't forget that Jesus will rule with a rod of iron. That's amazing. The iron carries on with Jesus. And he'll break in pieces all that oppose it, and he'll last for 1,000 years. I'll finish with two scriptures, Daniel 2:44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. This is the kingdom of Christ. This is the stone that comes to replace Babylon. And Revelation 19:5. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. So Daniel and Revelation, they agree, don't they, that Jesus will come with this rod of iron. So I'll leave you with that. I'm not sure what the next study is. Have we got it? Yeah. The next study is our roots are in Babylon. All our culture, our music, I want to show that politics, culture, fashion, mathematics, architecture, they're all come from Babylon. That's the next study. Let me announce this book. I didn't announce it at the beginning. We're up to number 2, and it's available from www.barrettministries.org.uk. That's the Barrett Ministries website. Or it's available as a paperback and Kindle download from Amazon. Well, God bless you. Thank you for watching. Hope I see you for the next study. Have a wonderful week.